Hey, today I'm gonna go through all the Cannibal Corpse albums, and I'll be honest, I haven't listened to them in a few months. So like I'm going, but like still, I've spent about must have been like 10 years by now that I've spent listening to Cannibal Corpse, and I really just wanna share how much I love Cannibal Corpse. And so by my idea of doing that was I wanted to just go through all the albums was my idea, and I'll just talk about all the albums, and I'll maybe point out my favorite songs from the albums. So and I also want to, just before I start, I just want to also mention how I'm not someone who has like very much musical knowledge other than the fact that I know what I like and stuff. So I don't really know if I'll be able to like explain what I like with specific songs or shit like that. I mean, I'll do my best, and I really just I'm very enthusiastic. I'm very it's music that really brings me a lot of joy. So I feel like I wanted to share it. You know, that's my little intro right there. That's the intro I wanted to give. So we're starting here with "Eaten Back to Life" by Cannibal Corpse. Their debut album. I believe that's what they say, what they call that, the first album. They released that. When did this come out? I'm curious. I wish I had this information more at hand. Let me just look at it. Hold on. We can look it up real quick. Oh, fuck. You know what? Let's just ignore that. Let's just not do that for the other albums, because I realized if I wanted to do that, I would have to do more work. The video would take longer. I would have to like maybe like edit, which would mean I would have to splice footage and stuff, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just gonna go with the title and what I remember, and then maybe some songs that I like off the albums if I can remember any. So "Eating Back to Life" was their first album. I really like it. It's really sick. So they have it's more of a thrash album than death metal. Well, I mean it is death metal, but like the stuff they did later is obviously more brutal, and they became more of their own thing later. And this one is more of a start. Like it's clearly very inspired by a lot of what was going on at the time. And this album has a few standouts to me. It's got the first ones I can think of is "Bird in the Backyard." Is one I always come back to on this album. I really like it. It's got a really cool riff on it. Let me just go to that track right here. I really like this part right here. I'm smiling. So I'm thinking now maybe I shouldn't be doing that for each album or for each song that I enjoy. But I just this is the start of the video, and I'm not gonna be doing any editing. So just get used to some weirdness. I mean, if you watched any of my other videos, you know there's not gonna be any high quality editing being done in this video. So don't be expecting nothing more than that. Hold on, let me get more wine. And this album really wasn't something that I. This isn't how I discovered Cannibal Corpse. I discovered Cannibal Corpse when I was like 16, 17, something like that. Yeah, about that age. I'm not exactly sure what year, but I like the only way I knew Cannibal Corpse was because like my brother only knew them through like Ace Ventura, like that the Pet Detective movie with Jim Carrey, and it was just kind of a joke about like, because we always liked like metal and stuff, and like my dad listens to a lot of like black metal and stuff, and it was like we liked that kind of music, and then it was always like the joke of how Cannibal Corpse was so brutal, and it just sounded like, and there was no real, it just sounded, it was too brutal, we couldn't understand it properly, so it was just like kind of a joke thing that we all knew about it, but none of us really listened to it ever until I mean, I don't know more than for myself. I'm not gonna speak for my brother or my dad. I know my dad has listened to some of it. He likes the a little bit of Vile, but he hasn't listened to a lot of the other albums. And I mean, I'll look. I'm just gonna tell you right now. If you're plotting on watching this whole video, this is gonna be a rambling video. I'm gonna be rambling because that's exactly what I need right now. Let's just call it like a say it's a podcast. This is a podcast episode. Let's call it that. It's more so. I just need to talk. I want to talk about Cannibal Corpse, so that's what I'm doing. And yeah, and so I never really took Cannibal Corpse serious until I was like 16, 17 or something, when I started listening to, because growing up I would only listen to like the music in my dad's like iTunes library, which is the music my dad had been collecting like while he's growing up and stuff. So there's like just all the music my dad ever listened to, and like a bunch of stuff that my dad and brother bought at certain points, and my uncle. So it's like fucking a bunch of different, like I don't think my dad ever listened to all of that stuff that's in there. My dad like collected music for like my dad basically collected music for a long time. So there was a lot of stuff, and I was mostly into like the new metal thing was like the thing I was into at the time. Before then, up until I was like 14 probably, and then I got into honestly I can't recall what I was listening to before Cannibal Corpse, because it all changed. Cannibal Corpse changed a lot. It was a lot of David Bowie and stuff like that. Not too much death metal at that point. It was mostly like David Bowie, and I think I listened to a lot of the Beatles and stuff, like just a lot of Velvet Underground, like very pop and like just rock. But I liked new metal, and I liked the parts of like Korn songs where the bass would go like really, where the bass sounded really heavy, and I really enjoyed those parts. And I think I went from that to looking up Cannibal Corpse, and I listened to like a part of Butchered at Birth, let me just go to Butchered at Birth right now. Hold on. I think we should just do it that way. Fuck going in order. I think that's a better way of going by it, because this is gonna be a ramble video anyway. So let's just go about it that way. So I found Butchered at Birth was the first album I listened to by Cannibal Corpse, and it honestly blew my fucking mind, which is like kind of funny to think about, just because when I listen to it again now, I mean, I don't know why that's funny. I kind of want to take back that statement, if you can call it a statement. I kind of want to take back whatever I just said. I just really enjoy this album, and I remember listening to the start of this album, and I was like, this is insane. This is like kind of that heavy part of Korn that I like, but it's like more out there. I remember now I remember it wasn't Korn. Korn was not what got me into Cannibal Corpse, but I mean it was obviously a part of it. But I remember let me find it. It's Igor. If you've ever heard of those, there was this one song by Igor, Moldy Eye by Igor, that has this really heavy part, and I was desperate to find something that had like anything similar to that. So this song is just a big build up to the end, where it eventually gets to this fucking pig squeal shit. I mean, Cannibal Corpse does not sound like that at all. Also, this came out in like 2011 or something. I don't know. Came out, years after Cannibal Corpse, obviously. But so, I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I could have scripted this video and made this easier on everyone. I mean, this is way easier for me, but it's not going to be a good video. But I'll be honest, I don't care. I'm just making a video. I just want stuff that I can upload onto YouTube, so that I'm uploading stuff onto YouTube, because I have this like whole thing in my head that like uploading stuff will make yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. But okay, now I'm getting into that thought that I was trying to avoid. I don't want to be in this thought. This is not what I'm trying to. I'm trying to talk about Cannibal Corpse. So anyway, I listened to that at one point in like 2014, 15 or something, and I was like, I want to listen to more heavy stuff, but like I didn't know where to find heavy shit, and so I found Cannibal Corpse. Well, I knew about Cannibal Corpse, and so I looked them up, and I found this album, and I listened to this album, and I remember specifically downloading this album and only this album onto my phone, and I went for a walk with the dog with my headphones on, and I listened to this whole album. So I ended up going for like a, how long is this album? Yeah, like a 40-minute walk, and I remember I had a headache when I got back home. I got a headache, but I was like, still, that was the coolest thing. That was the fucking coolest album. That was the coolest shit I'd heard in my entire life, and it made me want more. But I was like, I really hope that I'm not gonna get a headache from all the stuff that is gonna sound like. I hope not. I hope that everything I listen to. What am I trying to say here? I hope that I'm not at a point where the only thing that can satisfy my ears is stuff that will give me a headache. Is what I mean. But then I think, at least I think at this point, I just had like a bad day. I was probably maybe like sick or something at the time, or something, and I had like, I got maybe I also got downloaded like a low quality version of this album, so I got like tinnitus from it, or probably not tinnitus, because then I would have tinnitus right now. But you know what I mean? Like it was very high, the decibels or so. Look, I don't know the words for this, but I had a headache after this. That's what I remember. But then I waited like a few days, and then after I got really into it, I looked up and I downloaded this album, Vile, which is their best album. I still believe it's their best album. It's incredible. Just didn't want to talk over the scream at the start, at least not the whole scream. Just fucking, it starts with just a big cool scream from George Fisher, and I didn't know any lore of Cannibal Corpse, which now I know too much lore of the Cannibal Corpse brand. I know too much about Cannibal Corpse, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm really happy I know what I know about Cannibal Corpse, because there's been a lot of funnies from that. But this album fucking rules, and I have my favorites on this album is, well, the opening track, which is this Devoured by Vermin, which is fucking sick as fuck. It's awesome. It's just, I mean, you have the intro. He screams, it's a big scream, which is a really cool intro to a death metal album. It just, there's not a lot of albums outside of this genre that can start like that. You know, especially if you haven't heard a lot of death metal, that'll especially blow your mind. It's like, whoa, what the hell did I stumble into? Holy crud, that's crazy. That's really cool. And I mean, the more I'm looking through the title tracks of this album, I'm reminded of how much I love this album, and it's just like, I kind of just like every song on the album is just kind of perfection to me. They're all fucking incredible and really catchy. Like, I don't know if you can listen. I don't know how loud because I have the music at the lowest right now, so I don't know if you can even hear it. But I have it very quiet, but I can still hear it, and it's so catchy. It's so good. Devour. I love this album. It's good. And you have Mummified in Barbed Wire, which is the next track on this album, which is also just, oh yeah. I mean, this is kind of why I've always been scared of doing a video like this, like a video where I try and talk about the music I like, because I don't really have much else to say than this song is sick and this is sick and this is cool. But I feel like I haven't said too many of the same things over and over. So even if I'm not really saying much of value, at least I don't feel like at this point that I'm saying too many of the same words over and over, which can make it sound like I'm not just saying nothing. But that's only in my own head. So that'll be up to whoever reviews this video later, It doesn't matter what I feel. But this album rules, and it's definitely my favorite still. And it was like the album that really got, I mean, Butcher the Birth is really brutal and really cool, but this album is the one that, like, it sold me. And I have a memory of I was in the hospital for reasons I'm not going to talk about because it's gross. But I was in the hospital when I was like 18 or something. No, I guess I was like 16. I was in the hospital and I had just downloaded like 4 albums of Cannibal Corpse because I was just trying to get into Cannibal Corpse, and then I only had my phone, and I just remember laying awake at night in a lot of pain and just listening to this album and another one that I'll get to in a second. I don't know why I opened. I had a little popsicle just laying here, and I don't know why I opened it now because I'm trying to record a video where I'm talking. So like me sucking on the lopsicle, it's not gonna make it easier to talk. So I'm just gonna put it back there as if I didn't open it, pretend I didn't do that. But this album and also Perverse Suffering is a fucking awesome one, and then Monolith is also another fucking good one, which is the final track. It's just a very I want to say atmospheric, but I don't know if that's how you describe it. It's just it kind of sets up a story to me because it's in my head. Look, I don't remember the lyrics to the song, but it's like that's kind of what I enjoy, at least enjoyed mostly about Ken. Of course, when I started, like obviously their songs sound fucking brutal as hell. It's all brutal and cool, and it's fucking metal, dude. But like I got like a sense of like a story, a sort of horror story in there, and it just sounds really evil. And there's something to that, which is hard to explain to someone who's not into that. But like this song is one of the songs that made me feel that, like the song is called Monolith, and he says monolith a bunch of times, but every time he says it, he sounds like he's fucking out of his mind. He's like monolith. I mean, I was about to try and do the scream, but then I realized I don't want to try and replicate it because it'll be cringe. But then me not trying to replicate it made it kind of more cringe in my own brain. But also, let's not talk about cringe because I'm just trying to have a conversation here with myself and the camera. So let's just go move on ahead. And just the song, it's a monolith, like the fucking 2001: A Space Odyssey type of thing, like like a big thing made of, I don't know, rock meteorite from space or some shit, and it's scary and it's like turning people crazy or something. And he's talking about zombies in the songs. It's like a big scary rock turning people into zombies. And I just remember listening to the song, and it's just the idea. It's very like Dead Space. If you know about Dead Space or Death Space, it's called Dead Space, I think. If you know about those games, it's very much like those. And like the whole thing with those games is that they found like a big monolith thing, and it turns people into big scary like monsters, whatever, zombie things, whatever. I don't know. I just think it's cool. It doesn't really matter. The whole point, my entire point is just trying to explain why I think the song is cool, and I'm trying to explain what got me into Cannibal Corpse. So it's not really that important. But yeah, and then after Vile, I got really into this other album called what's it called? I remember the name of it. Decency Defied is a song off the album. What's the album called? I don't remember. Tomb? No, Tomb of the Mutilated is a different one. Wretched Spawn, that's what I'm thinking of. That's the third album I remember listening to. Like my journey through. I remember my journey through Cannibal Corpse, like discovering Cannibal Corpse is like what I remember mostly about the band, and that's like the reason they're so. I feel so deeply about Cannibal Corpse just because of this very reason that the very reason is. I'm not exactly sure. I think I just discovered them at the right time in my life, that they're so like ingrained in my brain that I could go years without listening to them, and I'll come back to them and I'll feel like the same sort of like childish joyous whimsy. Ugh, I'm sorry. I hope you didn't hear that sound because I made a horrible sound from my throat, the bottom of my stomach. That was horrible, but that's fine. And so I remember this album I listened to in the hospital as well a lot. I don't know why I'm bringing up the hospital, but I just It's just that's where basically what made me love the album. I was just because I couldn't sleep, and I was just laying there in a bed, and I was just basically trying to get time to pass, and I listened to this album I think like fucking 10 times in a row. This one and Vile. I listened to however many times you can listen to those in like 20 something hours. I don't know how long I was there, but I just remember this album has some songs that I don't really. I just got like the song about cutting someone's balls open or whatever. That's the song. What's that one called? Smashing someone's balls. Blunt force castration is a good. It's an incredible fucking title track. Not title. Why would I call it title track? I read the title and my brain went to title. It's an incredible title for a track. Is what I meant to say. It's just castrating someone with I don't know, a hammer. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just a sick song. I mean, every song in the album. Look, it's gonna be like the same thing for every album. I'm realizing now. So maybe I'll just like end the video very shortly, and it'll just be like me talking about my journey through discovering Cannibal Corpse. Which, it's just that's kind of what this video turned into. So maybe that'll just be what it is, and I'll just upload it anyway, even though I'm kind of embarrassed at this point. But I'll just upload it because I don't know. I have nothing better to do. I don't. Why the fuck not? They Deserve to Die is another track that like really got me into it. It's the last track on the album, and I remember it's just the selling point to me at the time when I first heard it was, I mean, it is really sick still. I just remember I was like blown away by how like he holds his he does those death growls, his big screams, and he has at the end of the song he does a scream where he screams for like a fucking whole minute. It's like a whole minute of him screaming or some shit. Where is it? Let me just skip to it. Turn it up a little bit. I want to hear it. Yeah, this is the scream. And I mean, I'm not gonna let the whole scream play. I mean, okay, well there it ended, so I don't know how long that lasted. Let me go back. Well, it doesn't matter. Oops. The whole point is a big long scream, and I was like, "Whoa, this is really cool." He does a big scream, and I mean, the song is also just really fucking catchy, which is kind of the thing with Cannibal. You don't expect a death metal band to be this catchy. Cannibal Corpse is kind of like, it's just incredible how catchy they managed to be with this kind of music to me. I love them. And then after that album, I was like, I kind of love them. I kind of really love Cannibal Corpse. What else could I listen to? And then I looked it up, and then everyone is like, The Bleeding is the best Cannibal Corpse album, is what they say on the internet. And so I was like, all right, I'll listen to their best album. And I looked it up, and I kind of have to agree. You kind of have to agree. If you listen to Cannibal Corpse, you probably will agree that The Bleeding is their most catchy and just kind of the best written album out of all of them. Just all the tracks have incredibly fucking memorable titles. Incredibly, not that, I mean, a lot of the albums have that, but The Bleeding has the title. The title of the tracks is not the point. I'm trying to get to a point, but I'm distracting myself. It's got incredibly like memorable riffs and incredibly memorable, whatchamacallit, the opposite of a verse. The part where the thing that they repeat. I know music. Anyway, the songs are good, and you have classics such as "Fucked with a Knife," which is just an incredible song. It's a fucking fuck, dude. And that bass, that's my favorite thing with them as well, when they do those little bass solos. Bass solos is kind of Cannibal Corpse's thing, in my opinion. There's probably other bands that do them, but no band has ever done it as well as Cannibal Corpse, just because it's kind of understated in a way. I feel like I'm pulling things out of my ass with like the wording of things, but it makes sense when I'm saying it. Up here, it makes sense to me when I'm saying it. It's just the bass isn't like overbearingly loud. Like Korn's bass is kind of like very in the forefront the whole time. You know what I mean? But like Cannibal Corpse's bass, you have to pay attention to like hear it until when there's a bass solo, it's in the forefront, and it fucking blows my fucking ass open every time. It's so good. I love it. You have like the fuck with the knife bass solo, stripped, raped, and strangled. That's just. I mean, I don't feel like I have to say anything about that song if you can hear that, if the song is even playing. And then Pulverized, you have Pulverized, Return to Flesh. Pickaxe Murders, the most underrated song of Cannibal Corpse of all time. I gotta agree with that. It's like, it's just this. I mean, all I can say without just going on forever about bass. I mean, I could go on forever, but me going on forever we wouldn't get anywhere. I would just be repeating myself more, because I must have been repeating myself a lot at this point, because I don't have too much to say about. I don't know enough about music. It's good. I love it. It's incredible. I don't really have. Is there any songs I don't like from Cannibal Corpse? Is there anything negative I can think of? I guess the most negative, if I like, just to be like critical, the only like thing I can think of is like the last two albums of Cannibal Corpse. I was talking to my friend about this. My friend Christian, we were talking about this a while back, and because I remember when, what was it, Red Before Black, when that album came out. I was like, I wasn't sure about why didn't really enjoy the album as much as the ones before it, and I wasn't sure because they released like 14 or something albums, and then Red Before Black came out, and I wasn't sure exactly why I didn't enjoy the album as much as the other ones, and I thought it was maybe like the drums, or it just didn't feel heavy enough, but that like I couldn't figure out what it was, which is why I keep saying that I don't know what I'm talking about with music, because like I'll notice if I like something or if I don't, but I don't know what exactly it is. But I was talking to my friend about it, and it kind of made sense. Like the drummer at Cannibal Corpse is getting a little old, and I really love him. I think his name is Paul. I don't know why I wanted to say that, but I wanted to say that just because I used to know the names of the band members like as if I knew them. I was so obsessed with them at one point, but like at this point I forget. I know there's like Paul Zajanjowicz something. And then there's George Fisher. I know the vocalist Paul. No, not Paul. George Fisher / Corpse Grinder. That's the vocalist at the time. And then there used to be Chris Barnes, was the vocalist back in like before '97. And then there's fucking the other boys, which I can't remember because I used to be very obsessed, but my brain does not retain information very well, so unless I'm super obsessed with it at the time, I'll just forget about it. And I still love Cannibal Corpse a lot, but I'm not like at the same point as I was like I don't know 3-4 years ago. But oh yeah, fucking. I also wanted to say, just because it turned into me just rambling about Cannibal Corpse. So I also just wanted to talk about how Chris Barnes at this point is kind of losing his mind, and it's kind of like a sad, funny thing. It's kind of really funny. It's also kind of sad because after he got kicked out of Cannibal Corpse in like '97 or '96, whenever the fuck that happened, before the Vile album came out anyway. He smoked a lot of weed. And then, I think that there's like some people think that the reason he got kicked out is because he smoked a lot of weed. Some people think that it's because he didn't agree with I think the most reasonable thing that we can, like the most reasonable conclusion you can get to from looking into all this stuff about Cannibal Corpse is that, basically he didn't agree with the way the band wanted to do the music, and the band were kind of surpassing Chris Barnes in their capabilities. Because if you listen to, you can listen to the version of Vile that came out. What's that called? Let me find it. It's called like. Let me just look it up like this. Hold on. Uh, Chris Barnes Vile. What's that one called? Created to Kill. Yeah, there you go. And it's just you can kind of just from what all the band members have talked about and said about this album, you could just kind of understand that it's kind of just Chris Barnes having his own idea of how to write, and he wanted to do his own thing on top of. He always wanted to, you could tell he had like a sort of like a poet in him. He really enjoys writing lyrics. He loves that shit. You can imagine him laying on his bed, like with his legs up and with his feet up in the air, writing lyrics about killing and raping and shit like that, and pedophilia, whatever he did. That's the kind of thing that he loved to write about. And you can tell from like the lyrics on all the older albums before this one, And then you could just kind of tell that, I mean, this album was the reason he got kicked out. Like, this album coming out was around the time when he got kicked out, because they got George Fisher in to like do the album instead of Chris Barnes, because he wasn't doing the vocals how they didn't like how his vocals, they didn't think his vocals fitted the stuff that they recorded, which I kind of agree with, mostly just because, I don't know, Chris Barnes, I'm not going to go too far into Chris Barnes. I think I haven't planned to, at least. But he seems like a guy who's very high on himself. If you follow him on Twitter, you would know what I mean. I've been following him on Twitter for, I don't know, a year or two. And he privated his Twitter. And he still posts stuff about Cannibal Corpse. When he was kicked out of Cannibal Corpse, over 20 years ago, and he still seems kind of mad about it, which is kind of a sign of someone, I don't know, it seems like he didn't feel like it was a fair thing for him to be kicked out. He doesn't seem like he's ever gonna get over it, because he's got to be like 50 by now. I'm not gonna look it up, but he's an old man, And it's kind of sad, but it's also kind of funny just because the way he tweets is, I mean, that's what stuck in my mind. He kind of says stuff that's like unintentionally funny because he's a weird old man. But that's fine. Not too weird. He's just an old man, really, who's a little stuck up or something. I don't know exactly. Let me stop talking about Chris Barnes. I love Cannibal Corpse, and I'm going to stop recording because I don't know what the fuck I've been saying. And maybe I'll do another video like this at one point when I figure out what I'm even talking about at this point. Because really, this is just me I'll just post this and call it like ranting about Cannibal